You sleep for hours, and yet when morning comes, the heaviness remains not the kind that bends your spine, but the kind that settles in your spirit, quiet and unseen. It's as if your soul has been carrying invisible weight you never agreed to bear. When someone asks what's wrong, there's no single answer. It's not one heartbreak, one loss, one failure. It's the quiet accumulation of small hurts that have slowly drained your light. People who feel this way rarely want to disappear. They just want the noise to stop. The noise of expectations, comparisons, and pretending to be fine when every day feels like a script you never auditioned for. Psychologists call it emotional exhaustion, the moment the mind stops fighting. Not out of weakness, but depletion. It happens when your emotional output exceeds your input for too long. You keep giving energy to survive, but nothing refills you. From the outside, you still function smiling, working, showing up, but inside, everything is muted. Joy becomes a foreign language you once spoke fluently, but now can barely recall. And it's not just emotional, it's biological. Under chronic stress, the brain begins to rewire for survival. Dopamine fades. Reward systems slow, motivation dims, life loses color. So when someone says, "I'm just tired," it's rarely laziness. It's the soul whispering, "I've carried too much for too long." Behind every weary heart is not a story of failure, but of effort. People who are tired of existing are often the ones who've tried the hardest to hold everything together. They are the peacemakers, the helpers, the quiet anchors for everyone else. They know how to survive chaos, but not how to rest in peace. We live in a world that worships productivity and calls stillness a sin. You're applauded for pushing through, but judged for slowing down. So you keep moving, mistaking exhaustion for purpose. Rest begins to feel undeserved, something to be earned rather than something essential. But here lies the paradox. If you wait until you deserve rest, you'll never rest at all, because the world will always demand more. And so you keep running, long after you've forgotten why you started. Being tired of existing doesn't mean you're weak, it often means you've been strong for far too long. You've carried emotions you never voiced, responsibilities you never chose, and expectations no one could sustain. After years of pretending the weight didn't matter, your spirit begins to whisper, "I can't keep doing this." There's even a name for the emptiness that follows. Anhedonia, the loss of joy. It's not sadness, it's silence. Life turns grayscale. The brain, in self-defense, stops reaching for happiness, because it's learned that joy can be unreliable. Better to expect nothing than be hurt again. That's when withdrawal begins. You cancel plans, stay quiet in conversations, avoid small talk not from apathy, but because social energy has become too expensive. Isolation becomes shelter, not comfort, but safety. You hide not to disappear, but to protect what's left of you. Each "I'm fine" said when you weren't. Each smile that hid the ache. Each time you stayed silent to keep peace, all of it adds up. Until one day, the performance collapses. Music doesn't move you. Laughter feels rehearsed. Even time feels heavy. You look around and wonder when life stopped feeling like life. Then comes meaning fatigue, the weight of living without purpose. It's not that you hate life, you just can't find a reason to keep repeating it. Wake up, work, scroll, sleep on repeat. The days blur, and the question quietly emerges, what's the point? But that question, though it sounds bleak, is a form of awakening. It's the soul asking for something real to live for. Because deep exhaustion is never just depletion. It's a signal, a message that something in your life no longer aligns with who you are. And while that realization hurts, it's also the first moment of truth, meaning psychologists say is medicine. Viktor Frankl wrote that people can endure almost anyhow if they have a why. The moment you begin to rediscover your why, your energy starts to shift. Slowly, the heaviness begins to feel less like despair and more like direction. It's the difference between being tired because life feels empty and being tired because you're rebuilding. Maybe the goal isn't to erase the tiredness, but to listen to it, to treat it not as an enemy, but as a messenger. Because somewhere inside that fatigue is a truth whispering, you've outgrown something. Maybe it's a job that drains you, a role that confines you, or an old version of yourself that survived but no longer thrived. Feeling this doesn't make you broken, it means you're evolving. And those who've carried this kind of exhaustion often become the gentlest souls. They sense pain without words, understand silence without explanation, and value honesty over performance. Exhaustion humbles you. It strips away illusion. You stop chasing what shines and start seeking what's real. You begin to see that life isn't about endless motion, but alignment, about finding spaces where you can simply exist without pretending. If this resonates, the invisible fatigue, the quiet ache, remember, you're not strange and you're not alone. You don't need to fix everything or force joy. All you need, just for now, is to stop running from your tiredness and listen to what it's trying to teach you. Because being tired of existing isn't the end, it's the beginning of living differently. The moment you admit it, something shifts. Honesty replaces denial. For the first time, you stop performing strength and start practicing truth. You realize you don't crave more movement, you crave meaning. And meaning rarely arrives with noise or applause. It shows up quietly in small, tender moments. Watching the rain trace a window, hearing a song that understands you, sitting in silence without needing to perform. In those moments, your nervous system finally exhales and says, "Thank you." Rest isn't laziness, it's repair. When you rest emotionally, you start to see how much of your life has been about survival, not peace. Every plan, every reaction, every habit, it's all been built to avoid pain, not create joy. But safety without meaning eventually becomes a cage. And when you feel trapped by your own routines, what you're really craving isn't escape, it's depth. You don't want to stop existing. You want to start living for something that feels true again. That reason doesn't have to be grand. It just has to be real. There's a term for this in psychology: existential fatigue. The soul grows weary not from pain, but from living without purpose. You can have stability, comfort, even success, yet feel hollow if none of it reflects who you truly are. Humans weren't made to merely endure, they were made to feel alive. That's why people who reach this point often begin to question everything: their work, relationships, identity, not out of confusion, but clarity. The soul is saying, "This version of me no longer fits." That's the sacred turning point. You begin to ask softer, deeper questions. What would my life look like if I stopped chasing approval? What if peace mattered more than progress? What if I stopped performing and simply existed? Slowly, you see that exhaustion was never weakness. It was resistance. A rebellion of your inner self against a life misaligned with your truth. Because energy doesn't just come from sleep, it comes from alignment. When your actions match your values, you feel light. When they don't, even small tasks feel impossible. So what do you do when you reach this point? You begin with honesty, not a dramatic transformation, but gentle noticing. What drains you? What nourishes you? Maybe it's the people you please. Maybe it's the version of you that never says no. Healing begins when you stop performing survival and start allowing presence. When you stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What is life trying to tell me?" This is how you begin to return, not with force, but with awareness. You rediscover wonder, not the grand kind, but the quiet one. The way sunlight spills through your window, the taste of morning coffee, the melody of a song that feels like memory. These small anchors remind you that life doesn't need to be extraordinary to be meaningful. It just needs to be felt. We forget how to feel. We're trained to analyze, to optimize, to perform, but to feel, to sit in sadness without fixing it, to hold joy without fearing its end, that's the part we lose. Those who are tired of existing aren't numb because they don't care. They're numb because caring has hurt too much. The way back isn't through more control, it's through surrender. To cry without explanation, to rest without guilt, to exist without needing a reason. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do isn't to push forward, but to stop, breathe, and begin again. This time from truth. Studies in psychology show that moments of awe, small encounters with wonder, can rekindle aliveness. Gazing at the night sky, listening to music that stirs something deep, writing to your younger self, these experiences reconnect you to existence itself. Awe reminds you that you are still here, and that being here still matters. Maybe that's the quiet miracle of being tired of existing. It strips life down to its essentials. It removes the noise, the roles, the illusions. It asks you to rebuild not a perfect life, but a true one. A life made of peace, not performance. So if you're in that space where everything feels heavy, where each day blurs into the next, remember this: you are not broken. You are being called back to yourself. Your tiredness is not your flaw. It's your compass. It's pointing you toward what's real. When you start listening, even gently, the world begins to look different. Colors return. Music feels closer. You start to laugh again, not because everything is fixed, but because you've stopped demanding perfection. You've made peace with imperfection, and that peace, that quiet acceptance, is where real life begins again. Yes, the weight may return from time to time. There will be days of doubt, of heaviness. But now you'll recognize it not as an ending, but as a reminder that you are someone who feels deeply, who thinks deeply, who lives deeply. And maybe being tired of existing doesn't mean you failed at life. Maybe it means you've finally paused long enough to realize life is meant to be lived consciously, not endured. And that pause, that breath, that soft awareness might just be the beginning of everything you've been searching for.